What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Here to break down Week 7 of the college football main slate on DraftKings. That's for Saturday, October 16th. Have a nice 12-game slate here to break down. If you're new here, I break down every single game, break down pretty much every relevant player. Don't just simply go over picks. This is pretty much an overload of information, anything you can find useful in setting your lineups. If you're not new here, welcome back. Let's make it a good week, everybody. I don't know about you, but the DraftKings tournaments have seemed a little different this year than in years past in college football. Quite frankly, been a little more difficult. So doing some rework and seeing what I can find. I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a reworking process. But yeah, we're still here. We've had some good weeks, especially early in the year. So let's keep trucking along. Slate, it's a lot of low over-unders. It's kind of a weird slate. I think there's only one total in the 60s, and that's UNC Miami. So probably UNC is going to be really popular in that game, right? Gonna have to choose your spots wisely. This show, as always, is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you haven't used Prize Picks, it's a great app. I highly recommend doing it. The college football offerings have been absolutely awesome. I've been sharing those on my Twitter at YonkersCFB. I keep saying I'm going to try to do a Prize Pick show every week. I recorded one last week, and then computer crashed right after recording, and I lost it. Didn't feel like recording it twice. But yeah, hopefully I'll try to get one of those out this week. So that's Prize Picks. Link is in the chat. If you're a new depositor, you get up to $100 in 100% instant deposit match. $100 directly into your account that you can use those funds right away. All right, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. First game on the slate, Texas A&M versus Missouri. Obviously, the big news, Texas A&M took down Bama last week. When you're playing Missouri, there's always going to be interest fantasy-wise because Missouri, they are averaging 6.6 yards per play, but they are allowing 6.8 yards per play. Quite frankly, they have one of the worst rush defenses that I've ever seen at the Power 5 level, that I've ever seen in the SEC. It's god-awful. Missouri's an embarrassment. Missouri is 0-9 against the spread in their last 9 games. I'm not an Eli Drinkowitz believer. That App State team just kind of is what it is. It's a whole program. He didn't really seem to do much, in my opinion, other than just carry on what they've been doing. And I haven't seen good results in Missouri. So, yes, I bet Texas A&M -9 in this game. All right, so Zach Calzada, quarterback for Texas A&M, 6.3 thousand. He looked absolutely like a different quarterback last week. I don't know what happened. He looked terrible in his first couple starts. Didn't win the job coming out. Haynes King was the winner of the job. Didn't look good, and then Haynes King got hurt. Now Calzada's the man. At 6.3, that's a pretty cheap price against a bad Missouri defense. You can throw on this Missouri defense. They're allowing 296 passing yards per game. You would like a little more running ability out of your quarterback, but at 6.3 thousand, I'm not sure it matters. I think he's an okay play. If you're looking at stacking options, I just don't recommend playing most of their wide receivers. I think Aina Smith is pretty clear-cut, their number one guy. It's either him or their tight end Jalen Weidermeyer. I think Weidermeyer is going to benefit. I think both these guys are really going to benefit if that's the new Calzada we're going to see throwing the ball all over the yard against Alabama. Is that going to continue? Again, hard exactly to say, but I think those guys are both too cheap. I think everyone here is a little too cheap. I think Texas A&M is a great play given how bad this Missouri defense has been all year. Isaiah Spiller at 6.6K, he's too cheap. The running back, I think the best way to attack this is against this Missouri rushing defense. I do think he will be highly owned. And I also think his backup, Devin Achane, this is a track star. He's extremely explosive. You've already seen he's putting up double digits every single week, so he's probably going to get you double digits with room for a lot more against this terrible Missouri rush defense. I do think Achane is a fantastic play. All right, looking at Missouri. I wouldn't play Bazelak, their quarterback, at 6.3. He throws the ball a lot, does not do it particularly well. Their stacking options are also a mess. So usually if you're playing a guy with no rushing ability like Bazelak or Calzada, you're probably going to stack him. And I just don't love the stacking options. Chisholm has 22 targets in his last 3 games. Dove at 4,000. He has 16 targets. I'm a little concerned about Chisholm, though, and why I wouldn't really consider him this week. Mookie Cooper came back. Ohio State transfer. I'm pretty high on Mookie Cooper, but he's been injured all year. Came back last week and it's kind of seemed like him and Chisholm just weren't really on the field at the same time. It didn't look like they were fully rotating because Cooper was getting all the slot snaps and Chisholm was splitting some in the slot, some out wide. But anyway, they were both only on the field for 17 pass snaps each last week, which does have me concerned. So nothing interesting there for me. Tyler Batty, I don't really know what else there is to say about Tyler Batty at this point. He's tied for the team lead in receptions. He's been their entire offense. He has been an absolute monster. You can see there the fantasy points per game is at 32. Texas A&M does have a decent rush defense. I feel like they're a little overrated. People keep calling this Texas A&M defense like amazing. I just think they're good. In the rush defense, they allowed over 300 yards to Kent State in the opener. They allowed over 150 to New Mexico, 162 to Mississippi State. Mississippi State never runs the ball. They ran for 162 on them. All that being said, they had held Alabama to 3.5 rushing yards per week. I've been kind of saying all year Alabama's just not great at running the football, and that's kind of a problem. I don't know what to say about Texas A&M's defense. They're okay. They're pretty good. I think Batty could put up points here at 8,000. He's probably going to have very low ownership. I'm not sure I will have a ton, but if they score, it'll probably be Batty, and they're expected to at least score a few times. So with that PPR upside, it's all right. But he's pretty damn expensive. All right, when we're looking at Florida, minus 11 against LSU, this one's probably going to keep going up. Why this line? Because LSU's a mess. Total mess. The three best players are out. Derek Stingley and Eli Ricks, their two cornerbacks, are going to be out. And Kayshon Boutte, their star wide receiver, is out for the year. So that means I'm pretty much looking Florida's way. I think this game could be messy. I think there's pretty high variance anytime you have something like that involved. Anytime you have a team like LSU that's that talented, but just their shit is not together, you're going to have some high volatility. So this game is it's kind of the wild card on the slate, in my opinion. I think Emory Jones is pretty okay. He's a dual threat quarterback. Florida's rushing attack is really good. They're running for 274 yards per game on 6.7 yards per carry. Huge improvement over the last couple of years. That's nasty, but they do spread it out as Emory Jones, and they have a few different running backs they give looks to. And their only real tests, this LSU rush defense, they allowed 223 yards to UCLA in the opener, famously, and then 330 yards to Kentucky last week. They did hold Auburn at 163 yards on 5.6 yards per carry, which I was kind of impressed because a lot of that was just Bo Nix scrambling at the end of the game. They mostly held Bigsby in check, and then Hunter had a few big plays. So while I don't think LSU's rushing defense is terrible, it also seems like a team that might be kind of quitting and giving up on the year. And if Florida's just ramming the ball down their throats all game long, I could see them kind of giving up on some tackles later in the game. So all that being said, Emory Jones is okay at 8.3. Definitely not a priority by any means. Copeland at 7.5 is egregiously priced. He has 18 targets in the last 3 games. Whitmore is second on the team with 11 targets in that span. I think Whitmore at 3.3 is too cheap. We've seen him coming on in recent weeks. Had 13 points last time out. 7 catches in the last 2 games. That's not really anything exciting, but he is too cheap down there. I would not consider the other options that do kind of rotate a little bit. As far as running backs, it's Pierce and Malik Davis who are going to split the reps. Was pretty mad Malik Davis missed last week against Vanderbilt. Took him over on the rushing touchdown, 0.5. And then, of course, Pierce got like 3 touchdowns right away, or 2 touchdowns, whatever he got. But yeah, these guys split work. I already gave the spiel about LSU's rush defense. I think when you're splitting carries like that, I can't really recommend any of these guys too highly. Pierce just seems to have a way of getting in the end zone. He already has 3 games where he has multiple touchdowns rushing, which seems kind of crazy. But I'm not sure Florida's a priority. Okay, Max Johnson at 8.2. I could make an interesting case for Max Johnson. Florida is ranked 109th on PFF in coverage, 109th in the country. And Max Johnson has been just about as consistent as they come up until last week. And I do think losing Kayshon Boutte, I do think he kind of relied on Boutte just taking some short yard passes to the house, getting open on deep passes. It's pretty much all been Kayshon Boutte. So that being said, with how bad Florida's passing defense has been, and Florida maybe will be playing with the lead here, I could still probably make a case for Max Johnson. It's not a particularly strong one. All right, when we're looking at the wide receivers here, Oh boy, it's a mess. It's a mess. I took a while diving into this because obviously with a guy like Butte going out, somebody's going to step up. I'll try not to take too long on this. Basically, I think Jack Beck, so they have a bunch of freshmen. Jack Beck's one of them. 5.5K, I do think he's correctly priced as their top guy. I am mildly interested in him. I will probably play his over on Prize Picks, his over fantasy points. He's just kind of been Max Johnson's safety blanket. He looks for him on third downs a lot. He's a hybrid tight end, wide receiver. I would just call him a wide receiver, honestly. But he plays a lot in the slot. I think Beck is the top guy. Other than that, Trey Palmer at 4.6. He's going to be on the field. Hasn't really done anything in a couple of weeks. Could he have a big game here against this apparently bad Florida secondary? Sure. Brian Thomas, another freshman, 3.7K. They've been running him deep a lot, and he's been getting a lot of targets. He's actually second on the team once we remove Butte with 15 targets in the last 3 games. But he hasn't really done anything with those. Could he be the deep threat? Now that Butte's gone, possibly, but it's kind of him and Palmer. Palmer's been kind of rotating with Jenkins down at 3.3, so the rotating guys are hard to get to. Cole Taylor really hasn't done much other than like a long touchdown here or there. Deion Smith, I think the freshman has the highest upside, had a huge game against Central Michigan earlier in the year, and then has done nothing. But he missed practice on Wednesday. And then Devontae Lee, another guy who Coach O said might step up in Butte's absence, he also missed practice on Wednesday. So it's a huge mess. If you're looking for a min price guy, Malik Neighbors is going to be on the field. It was actually on the field quite a lot. I believe he's playing in that slot role. Him and Beck are the two guys playing in the slot now. And he was on the field a lot, and he did have 15 points against Kentucky. Had a touchdown, 66 yards. He should not be min priced. Is he a must play or anything like that? No. But and when you have such a mess here, and you have one guy you're pretty sure is going to be on the field a decent amount, you could do worse. Don't play LSU's running backs because they don't have any. They don't have a run game. Just like, not at all. Don't have one. All right, my throat's sounding. Let me get some tea. See my Dr. Seuss mug. All right, we're back. Auburn versus Arkansas. Yeah, so Bo Nix, you know the deal with Bo Nix. I gave the spiel on him last week. I won't do it here. He's going against an Arkansas defense that got obliterated by Ole Miss last week. I don't know if I'd put too much stock in that. I think Ole Miss is an outlier. I know Ole Miss is an outlier as far as how good they are defensively. People just kind of forgot because Alabama shut them down, but that's Alabama. Bo Nix, on the road in his career, much maligned and for good reason. He's completing less than 55% of his passes on the road in his career. He has 10 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Not what you want to see, not the ratio you want to see for fantasy purposes. Now he faces Barry Odom. That's also not what you want to see. I know Ole Miss embarrassed Barry Odom. Barry Odom, I still am pretty confident is one of the best defensive coordinators around. Not spelling out great for Bo Nix. That being said, he's priced extremely cheap at $6,000, given that he does have some rushing ability. If you were ever going to play Bo Nix, you could do worse here on the road in Fayetteville. I mean, he had a good game on the road in Death Valley. One could say Bo Nix is too cheap. That's the nicest thing I will say. He's not super terrible this week. This Arkansas defense is pretty good, but it's not exceptional. Looking at stacking options, I would say let's not look at them. They spread the ball out a lot, and the target data is not even really worth getting into, except for saying that Kobe Hudson's been one of their more targeted guys, and he's only at 3.4K, and I don't really know why, because I would actually have more confidence in him than anyone else here. So, sure. Okay, running backs. Let's talk about the running backs. All right, so on the season, Tank Bigsby, 5.8K. He has 458 rushing yards on the season, and he's been outrushed by Jarquiz Hunter, 4.1K, one of my favorite running backs in college football. This kid, I love this kid. Jarquiz Hunter has 465 yards. But here's the catch. Tank has 84 carries. Hunter has 47 carries, nearly half. Tank has 5.5 yards per carry, and Hunter has 9.9. Hunter has been amazing. There's no other way to put it. Hunter has been amazing. It's not just like some garbage. Sure, he ran them up a little bit against Akron and whatnot, but so did the whole team. He's out here hurdling guys. He's getting game-winning touchdowns on the road in Death Valley against LSU. I love Jarquiz Hunter. Now, am I saying that I love him Fantasy-wise, not necessarily. I do think he's too cheap. We saw this Arkansas defense be a little bit vulnerable against the rush, and these numbers aren't going to sound like a little bit. Yeah, they've been getting gashed. They gave up 273 rushing yards to UGA, but UGA ran the ball a million times, just not super well because they had the lead all game. But Ole Miss just ran it all over them. 324 rushing yards. They did allow 105 rushing attempts in their last 2 games. So what that tells me, Auburn on the road with those Bo Nix numbers, they're going to try to keep it on the ground. I could see a big game for either one of these guys. Hunter will probably be more popular, and Tank just has not had a great year. But I mean, Tank's amazingly talented himself at 5.8K. I think I could make a pretty strong case for either one. All right, Arkansas. Yeah, KJ Jefferson, big fan of his work. Arkansas has run the ball for 200-plus yards on every single team they've faced except Georgia. And Georgia's one of those outliers, right? Ole Miss is the outlier when you're playing their offense. Georgia's the outlier when you're going against their defense. Yeah, KJ is dual threat. He had 6 total touchdowns last week, 3 of them rushing, 3 of them passing. Can we expect that every single week? Obviously not. Can we expect it against Auburn? Probably not. I mean, Auburn has a pretty good defense. They're not like fantastic anywhere. I just think they're kind of good everywhere. I do think they have a pretty good D-line. 7.5. Not sure that's doing it for me. I think this game's probably going under. It's at 53.5. Running backs, they really split the carries. Rocket Sanders, 3.4K. Traylon Smith, 5.3K. Traylon Smith gets the start. He's decent. He's a fine running back. But Rocket Sanders is just amazingly talented. Had 139 yards last week. Finally, everyone realized this kid's pretty good. I've been trying to say it for a while. Not that I'm some kind of hipster on Rocket Sanders, but I kind of am. Him and Jarquez Hunter, man, 2 of my favorite running backs in this game. I really like this kid. He did lose 2 fumbles. Or he fumbled twice, lost 1 of them last week. And they do spread the ball around at 3.4K. I think if you're totally punting, that's the running back you'd probably punt with. Okay. AJ Green also is min priced. This guy's a big play threat, but he does not get a lot of carries. You can see there. Has not had more than 7 carries in a game. Busted a big one against Texas A&M. Everyone thought he was amazing, and he's pretty cool, but no volume. And volume is king in fantasy. All right, Traylon Burks, star wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in college football. He has at least 24 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. And then Georgia, the outlier, is the only other one. So Burks is probably too cheap at 6.6K. I know they're not looking to throw the ball a lot. I know Auburn's defense is okay. But he was banged up to start the year. That kind of depressed his stats earlier on in the year. I think he's fine. I don't even think I'm going to talk about any of the secondary options because they just don't use them very much at all. All right, Oklahoma State. 5.5 point dogs to Texas. Over-unders at 60. I kind of like the under. I kind of like Oklahoma State. I'm not sure I could play an under in a Texas game right now. I think this could be a letdown spot for Texas. That being said, they've been super impressive. I'm not going to count out Texas too bad. You know you're going to want possibly some ownership interest in this game, however, because Texas's offense, 7.2 yards per play, but their defense is allowing 6.5 yards per play. That's pretty bad. That's like when we were talking about Missouri. I mean, that's fantasy gold right there. However, Oklahoma State is the opposite of fantasy gold. This has been a really good defense. We haven't really seen them play a great offense. We've seen them play some decent offenses. We've seen them play some Big 12 teams, and they've shut them all down. So definitely a contrast in styles. I'm interested to see how this one plays out. Oklahoma State, they've really been outgaining teams. They've just been playing good defenses. They haven't really finished drives very well, so I'm not overly confident in this offense right now. They've kind of just turned into a team that will just run the ball a million times. In their last 3 games, they have 57 rushing attempts, 43 rushing attempts, 59 rushing attempts. That's all they're doing. They're just smash mouth football. That being said, Spencer Sanders, their quarterback, 7.1K. He does have dual threat ability, and against a terrible Texas defense, you're always going to have to be a little bit intrigued. Not a whole lot of passing attempts. The quarterbacks on this slate are not fantastic. We have a lot of dual threats you could kind of make a case for. I feel like you're just going to have to get a little bit lucky, kind of look at those bad defenses. You could say Texas has a bad defense. Sure, I'm going to swing it with Sanders. I couldn't talk you off. There aren't really any quarterbacks to feel super confident about this week is what I'll say. Like I said, you got to kind of pick and choose your spots. It's a tricky one. All right. Jalen Warren, running back for Oklahoma State. He has a very good matchup against the Texas defense, allowing 200 rushing yards per game on 5.4 yards per carry. Texas pass defense isn't good either, but I think their rush defense has been especially vulnerable. Warren's a beast. Warren has been racking up an insane amount of carries. Like I said, they're keeping the ball on the ground. It's basically him and Sanders. 36 rush attempts, 27 rush attempts, 32 rush attempts. I think Jaylen Warren is a fantastic play. All right, a wide receiver. Tay Martin's really become the guy. Washington State transfer. Everyone wanted him to do it at Washington State. I wanted him to do it at Washington State. Never did. Now he transferred. And he is doing the darn thing, folks. He's played in 3 games this year. That's it. But he does have over 100 receiving yards each time he has been out there. In 3 games, he has 22 receptions, 315 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's really expensive. $7.7K. That is hard to stomach. I think the price is warranted. If you want to pay up at receiver, I think Tay Martin is a fine option against a bad Texas defense. Other than that, if you want to pay down, Rashard Owens at 3.2K is too cheap. He does have 13 targets in the last 3 games. He is filling in for Braden Johnson, who is out for the season, and he has done a pretty good job of it at 3.2K. I do not hate that. Other than that, Presley, what's your first name? Brennan Presley? Brennan Presley at 4.5K. I really wanted to like this guy going into the year. Really small guy, really went off in the bowl game, looked very explosive, but he just hasn't done anything at all, and they are not giving him the ball, so pass. All right, Texas. They are averaging over 50 points per game in games that Casey Thompson has started and played the whole game in. Casey Thompson's been fantastic. At 7.8K, I mentioned, I'm not sure the big plays will be there against this Oklahoma State defense. I do think this Oklahoma State defense is very good, but I'm not totally sure it matters with how well Texas's offense is playing. So some volatility here. Casey Thompson does have some dual threat ability. He has been throwing it deep more, but that's not really the scouting report on him, but he's looked pretty good doing that, especially last week to Xavier Worthy. I don't think he's a priority play or anything. I think he's okay. I will probably mostly fade him just because I think the game's going under, but I could be totally wrong on that. Texas is at home. Like I said, 50 points per game when he's at quarterback. I wouldn't talk you out of it. All right, Xavier Worthy is the guy at wide receiver. Last 3 games, he has 22 targets, whereas Joshua Moore at 4.8K has 15. I think Worthy's okay. I'm not sure I'm going to pay up to get there. He is their deep play guy, so he's probably going to be a little bit deep play reliant. He's had really good games in 3 of his last 4. Maybe I'm overlooking him here. I just think it's a tough matchup. I'm not sure the deep balls will be there. But this kid's a stud. He's really good, is what I will say. Anyone behind them has not done anything this year, so skip. Bijan Robinson, running back, 8.9K. Most talented player in college football, at least definitely the most talented running back. Not much more to say. I think they should be throwing the ball to him more. I would feel better about him in the spot because he does have a tough matchup. Oklahoma State is allowing only 2.8 yards per carry. I don't know. Bijan's okay. He's 8.9. I'm never going to talk you off Bijan, but he does have a tough matchup. All right, UCF versus Cincinnati. UCF, amazingly, 21-point underdogs. If you were to hear that a couple of years ago, it would be amazing. Not necessarily considering the circumstances, however. Cincinnati, over-unders at 57.5. I don't really think we can expect a lot of points from UCF. Normally, I would see that large spread and would say, whatever, UCF's going to score points regardless. But there's some concerning things here. So, Dylan Gabriel's out for the year. And in steps Mikey Keene, 5'11", freshman quarterback. I think he's from Arizona. Not exactly the highest recruit. I think he was a 3-star, but didn't look super encouraging when he got the job. And he hasn't been super encouraging in his first 2 games. That being said, freshman thrust in there first 2 games. They're dealing with a lot of injuries elsewhere too. But I'm just not sure this is the matchup to play in him, because if he is going to have a bounce back this year, I'm not sure it's here, because Cincinnati's only allowed 3 passing touchdowns all year long. UCF, get this. UCF, they didn't throw for under 200 yards at any point last year, and didn't throw for under 200 yards in the first 3 games this year. And it wasn't really particularly close either for the majority of those games. Most of them were over 300 or 400. In the first 2 games Mikey Keene has started, they've both gone under 200 passing yards. So pretty clear step back. I am skipping. I don't really think I can play the wide receivers in this tough matchup. I do think Ryan O'Keefe is too cheap, everything being said. He's been their clear target guy, especially with Jalen Robinson out. I do expect Jalen Robinson to miss this game, but there hasn't been a whole lot of news. I think that makes O'Keefe a fine play. Other than that, Brandon Johnson at 3.8K. He's caught a lot of touchdowns this year. He's kind of a big body Tennessee transfer, but I'm not sure this is the matchup to play him. All right, running back. We have another guy who's too cheap, but not in love with playing him. That's Johnny Richardson. He's been leading the team in carries with Isaiah Bowser out. Isaiah Bowser looked like he was going to be a workhorse for the first couple of games, and then he got injured. Expected to probably be out this game too, although no definitive news again. Johnny Richardson at 3.9K. He's electric, man. He's a little guy who's pretty fast. He has 3 receptions for 85 yards in his last 3 games. Last week he did have over 100. He had over 100 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. I think Johnny Richardson is too cheap, is what I'll say if you're punting. But not in love with it. All right, Cincinnati. Yeah, you can convince me it's a Desmond Ridder week. Again, Ritter's pretty volatile, but he's been throwing the ball a lot better this year. I wish he was running the ball more. I think he's fine. He's a dual threat, 8.1K. I think he's fine this week. I mean, usually, right, last year Desmond Ridder is priced over 9,000 most weeks. This year, he just hasn't really been getting the job done, hasn't been running as much. That could change at any time, right? That being said, I think this is kind of a good matchup for UCF's D-line because that's what they have. They have a good D-line. That's pretty much what they have defensively. Cincinnati is pretty good everywhere, but they don't have a good offensive line. UCF is rated 16th by PFF in their rush defense, so not a fantastic matchup, but I'm not really sure it's going to matter. I just think Cincinnati's superior, and they could kind of impose their will on them. Jerome Ford, running back, 7.2K. He's okay. Not really sure he's a priority play. He's pretty electric. Going to need some big runs for him. Oh yeah, I will say for Desmond Ridder. Skipped over at my notes. Pretty much every team has thrown the ball on him this year. Their stats are a little suppressed because they played Navy, who obviously doesn't throw the ball. So I do think that's a good sign for Desmond Ridder in this matchup. If you listen to the show, you probably know we don't play Cincinnati wide receivers. I might have to start rethinking that. They're throwing the ball a little better, and Alec Pierce is looking like a beast. I'm not sure I would ever pay these exorbitant prices on these receivers, but yeah, Pierce, last 3 games, he has 24 targets. That's pretty good. Mike Young is behind him with 16, and then their tight end, Taylor, where are you? Taylor's too cheap, 3.2K. He has 12. Not a fantastic player or anything, but just slightly too cheap. But I am never in love with playing Cincinnati pass catchers, as you probably know. All right. Okay. Michigan State, Indiana. Michigan State -5. Do not have the over-under in this game. Forgot to write it down. I think it's in the low 50s or high 40s. I think it's in the high 40s, and I took the over. I don't know. It was a couple days ago. I'll look it up. Anyway, I'm not in love with... So Michigan State's offense has been really good. Let me just say that. They've been really good, really explosive. They've been awesome. I'm not really sure I'm in love with playing Peyton Thorne at 7.3K. He's fine. He's been really good this year, actually. But he's only attempted more than 30 passes once this season, and he isn't really a dual threat. So I'm just not sure I can play a profile like that, expecting 30 points. Can he get you 30 points? Yes. Can you expect it? I don't really see why you would. As far as wide receiver, last 3 games, Jalen Naylor has 25 targets. Mosley actually is second at 3.9K with 16 targets. And then Jaden Reed at 6.3K. What does that tell you? It tells you Reed is probably going to be the lowest owned guy here. Naylor's probably going to be somewhat popular. Had a huge week last week. Had 3 different touchdown receptions of over 60 yards. Naylor's pretty explosive. This is an okay matchup, but I don't think it's fantastic. I think Indiana's secondary is actually okay. But you see their numbers haven't been fantastic. So not prioritizing anyone, but if you want to leverage play, it's probably Reed. And then Naylor's fine play as well. Both those guys. You could argue Naylor should be more expensive. He probably should be. All right, so Kenneth Walker at 6.7K. All of a sudden, he's a Heisman candidate. I guess that's what Twitter thinks. That's what the Athletic thinks. Sure. I think it's a pretty bad take, but sure. Indiana's mediocre at stopping the run. You look at Kenneth Walker's profile. He does have 330 burgers this year, so I can't really argue he's been extremely impressive. And I really love him as a player. Not trying to talk shit on Kenneth Walker by any means. I love him as a player. But you look at who those were against. They were against 3 bad teams. It was against, what was it, Rutgers, Northwestern, and who am I forgetting? Western Kentucky. They have a joke of a rush defense. So, I mean, he's been really good. He could still be good going forward. But I don't know. He's probably going to be super, super popular because he is too cheap at 6.7K, given some of his blowups. He would probably be popular, but he's cheap given what you're getting. He's probably cheap. All right, speaking of cheap, Jack Tuttle, Indiana quarterback, 4.9K. Oh my goodness. I almost have to consider playing some Jack Tuttle in the Superflex. Not exactly recommending it. He hasn't been good. He's stepping in for Michael Penix, who's hurt. He's a Utah transfer. Can it be worse than Michael Penix? I don't know. Tuttle has 5.6 yards per attempt in his career on over 100 attempts. So, just tells you he's not fantastic. But he does have some stacking options if you're going super cheap. Ty Freivogel blew up, had some monster games last season. He's only at 5.3K. Really hasn't gotten the job done this year, but he does have 26 targets over his last 2 games. If you're getting 14 targets a game and you're a deep threat, I know I've personally seen him drop a few of those with my own eyeballs watching the game. I don't know. He's okay. He's always a tourney option because he's Ty Freivogel, right? He could have a 40 burger, but I would say this season the odds are more likely he'll get you about 11 points than he will get you 40. So from what we've seen, this offense has just been dreadful. All right, other than that, Hendershot averaging 8 targets over his last 2 games, 16 targets in his last 2. Miles Marshall has 10 in that span. It hasn't really done much for me, Miles Marshall. I think Hendershot is a very reliable tight end. He'll probably get you double-digit points if that's what you need. Not sure what the upside is. I do not play Indiana running backs. Skip. Okay, Nebraska going against Minnesota. This is an ugly one. Over-unders at 48. Nebraska is a 4-point favorite. Adrian Martinez at quarterback at 7.9K. Adrian Martinez has just been week in, week out, an absolute monster. 33 points against Michigan last week. Look at all these rushing touchdowns he's getting. In his last 3 games, he has, 6 rushing touchdowns. Those are Malik Cunningham stats. And he's been throwing the ball a lot better this year. Granted, it's not the most consistent, or it doesn't look the most consistent. It's not the most accurate, but it's been consistent from a fantasy standpoint. He's been getting points. So 7.9K, low over-under. I don't know. He just routinely gets the job done. I will not rule out Adrian Martinez. As far as running back, they've had a changing of the guard. Gabe Ervin went out for the season. Ramir Johnson has really stepped up at 5.5K. He's been the guy. They don't have a fantastic running game, or most of it's Adrian Martinez running around. Johnson's been okay. Where he gets his value is in the receiving work. He had 6 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown last week against Michigan. That's super impressive. We haven't really seen him do a whole lot of that before. He looks like he's a pretty good receiver. We just haven't seen it. Is that an outlier? Is that a sign he's going to be, because they do need some receivers to step up, is going to step up in that receiving game? I don't know, dude. I don't know. All right, as far as the receivers, I'm not playing Martin at 5.7. Had 1 big game against Illinois. Nothing since then. Samari Torre, I think, is the best receiver at 5.4K. He is kind of a deep play guy. Not very consistent at all. Maybe a GPP. Maybe. Other than that, Austin Allen, their tight end, should not be MINN priced. He's not fantastic or anything, but he caught a touchdown last week. He's a good college tight end. He's okay. So if you really need a MINN price guy. Minnesota, they don't pass the ball. So they don't have a quarterback, so skipping over that. Tanner Morgan, 8.5 fantasy points per game. Cole Kramer, was watching the game. This guy was getting in the game last week. They gave him a decent amount of carries, 8 carries. I guess that was 2 weeks ago. They had a bye week. But against Purdue, I would imagine they're going to do that more because, like I said, they don't even have a quarterback. They may just stop pretending to have a quarterback and just have Kramer run the Wildcat back there. So I'm not playing their wide receivers either. That being the case. With that being the case at quarterback. Okay, so Trey Potts is out for the year. Muhammad Ibrahim's out for the year. They're dropping like flies in this backfield. They're down to 4 scholarship running backs. I think Marquise Irving's going to be the guy at 3.9K. I've been saying that all week. Had a few people say they think it's going to be Kai Thomas. The coaches have said it's probably going to be a running back by committee, but I have heard them say that before. They said that when Ibrahim went down, and then Potts was getting 30 carries a game. They said before the season Ibrahim was going to start splitting carries, and he got, 30 carries in the first game? I don't know if I believe them. On one hand, you could say, well, they keep having running backs get hurt when they give them 30 carries a game, so they need to lessen the workload. I would say that makes sense. On the other hand, you could say they're down to 4 scholarship backs. They really need somebody to step up. They don't really have many options. They're just going to keep doing what they're doing and feed. Long story short, I think it's going to be Marquise Irving. He's a 4-star. I think he was the number 9 rated back coming out last year. True freshman. He does have a tough matchup, so at 3.9K, while I do think he's too cheap, and you could make the case he gets 30 carries in this game, I'm really not sure he does. He could, but I'm not sure he does. And Nebraska's rush defense is pretty good. They're only allowing 3.9 yards per rush, and they face some pretty good teams. That being said, the 2 teams that they have faced, let me go look at this, didn't run the ball very well on them. So Michigan, not very well, but definitely had success. Michigan had success running the ball on them. And Michigan State, never mind. They're pretty solid because they held Michigan State down. But Oklahoma ran the ball on them a little bit. So it's an okay rush defense. I think it's pretty good rush defense. It's not like elite. It's not Georgia, but it's pretty good. Okay, Kentucky, 23-point underdogs on the road against Georgia. College Game Days decided they want to go to Georgia for the second time in 3 weeks, which is stupid, but that's okay. Over-under is 44.5. So I think I'm going to skip the Kentucky offense because I don't want to waste your time. Chris Rodriguez, their running back, if they have any chance at all of keeping this game close, which I hope they do. I like Kentucky. I feel like I just kind of talk shit on Kentucky because the advanced stats don't love them. They've lost me some bets. Yes, I'm salty. They had 225 yards of offense at home against Florida and somehow beat Florida. Yeah, I had a bet on Florida in that game. I just don't get this Kentucky team. I like them, and then I feel like they've been better in years past than they are this year. I'm just not a huge believer in this team, but this is the team that's getting the job done. Sometimes it's just how things work. It just comes together. At 6.9K, I mean, he's a really good back, but obviously a super tough matchup. But if they have any chance in this game, it's Chris Rodriguez getting 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, which they could score 14 points, and Chris Rodriguez could have a good game. So, tough. Probably be super, super low owned. Wan'Dale Robinson, 6.4K, every CFF guy's favorite wide receiver. Him and Adrian Martinez, people kept drafting him, and then the 1 year they stopped drafting him, they both have great years. Tough matchup. So, Josh Ali, their other top wide receiver, is out for the year. So I think that's going to hurt this offense even more. I don't think they're going to score a whole lot of points in this game, folks. Newsflash. Georgia's defense, allowing 5.5 points per game. And one of those was a pick 6, so it doesn't even count against the defense. All right, so news out of Georgia. Quarterback. I don't think it matters who's at quarterback. I don't really think I'm interested. But JT Daniels, he's on a pitch count, whatever the hell that is in practice. Kirby Smart keeps throwing him under the bus, saying it's a pain tolerance thing or whatever he's saying in interviews. I don't know. They don't throw the ball. Why am I interested in their wide receivers? I'm not. Brock Bowers, at their tight end at 6.7 has been really good, but are you really going to pay for a team that doesn't throw the ball, their tight end at 6.7K? Don't see why you would. Could it pay off? Sure. Is it a smart play? No, it's not. Jermaine Burton's their best wide receiver at 5,000. That being said, he keeps getting injured on and off all year. He's supposed to be back for this game, but can you really trust it when they're not even throwing the ball? McConkey, Lad McConkey. What a name. I think this guy's a freshman walk-on. I will check that. Anyways, coming out of nowhere, and he has 2 20-point games in his last 3, fantasy-wise. He's been pretty good. If you're playing a guy on Georgia at the pass catcher, just pay down and play McConkey. Don't bother with all those probables and questionables and pitch counts and Nonsense. All right, Zamir White. I'm not a huge Zamir White fan in fantasy at 6.2K, but like I said, huge home favorites. Over-under is really low, though. Zamir White does have 6 touchdowns in his last 4 games, but I'm not really sure like what the upside is. Are you really expecting a rushing bonus out of him? Probably not. Like, what's the most rushing yards he's had? It was last week against Auburn, 79. I don't know. He could get 2 touchdowns. He could get 3 touchdowns. He's okay. If you're building 150 lineups, you probably have some. If you're building 1 or 2, you won't have him. Okay. Moving on, Miami versus UNC. So this is the game I was talking about, 63.5 over/under, and I am tempted to take that over. I did bet UNC -7. They're at -7.5. Basically, both these teams are a mess. Miami's off a bye, but folks, a bye week doesn't matter. Coming off a bye week doesn't matter when you have a lame duck coaching staff and when you have a lame ass program. That's what Miami is. They're a joke. Been some rumors about their practices and whatnot that I won't repeat because I don't know if they're true or not. But yeah, Miami's a mess. Straight up, they're a mess. And now they have to travel to face a crazy UNC offense. So we'll see. All right, let's start with Miami's offense. They just haven't been very good. Their numbers themselves, while they don't look good, they're still buoyed by 739 total yards. That output was against the mighty Central Connecticut State. So, congratulations. They do play at a decent tempo, and they do have some talented kids. So, and UNC's not perfect defensively, so maybe you could pick and choose your spots. Tyler Van Dyke will be the quarterback, 6.9K. If he was cheaper, if he was like 6,000, I'd probably play him in this spot. He's a big kid. He's got an arm, and he can run a little bit. But, yeah, I don't know. I do not know. Mike Harley, I can't figure out what's going on with Harley and Rambo. At the beginning of the year, I said Harley's still the number 1 guy. Don't worry too much about Rambo. I think Rambo's number 2. It's kind of close, but I said I still have Harley. And then Rambo had like 18 targets the next game. And then now fast forward, in the last 2 games, Harley has 3 more targets than Rambo. So I don't know what's going on. I think Rambo's the better price adjusted play at 6.1K than Harley. Harley's really boom or bust. I guess if you're going GPP, you go Harley. But has Harley boomed once this year? I don't think so. No, not really. Does have a touchdown in each of his last 2 games, but look at the competition. Will Mallory, their tight end. This guy should be good, but he drops everything. He's track speed at the tight end position, taking over for Brevin Jordan. I really thought Will Mallory was going to have a big year, and 1 week I played a ton of him. He dropped a touchdown and was wide open on another touchdown. Derek King didn't see him, but don't have to worry about that because Derek King's out for the year, and so is his backup, Jake Garcia. So that's how we get Van Dyke. Cameron Harris. See, I like to make fun of Cameron Harris, but this guy does have breakaway speed. Has terrible vision, but he has breakaway speed, and he's playing North Carolina. So anything is possible. Cody Brown, you're going to see 19.7 fantasy points, but you're going to have to keep in mind that was against the mighty Central Connecticut State. I think Jalen Knighton's going to get the ball a little bit at 4.6K, but I think there's some better options behind him. He was out, suspended for the first 4 games, came back and had 15 carries. I think him and Harris are going to kind of split the usage. All right. UNC. This is the juicy one, but it's kind of the obvious one. So I don't know how much I'll go over their individual players because you probably know them by now if you're listening to this video. I like them a lot, but everyone probably will, right? Like, I'm pretty sure they have the highest team total on the slate. I'll go check that, but it's the highest over-under, and they're favored to win by over a touchdown at home. So they're playing a Miami defense that most people still think is good. I don't really. They have the lowest tackling grade on the slate, and they have the lowest coverage grade on the slate, does Miami. That's not good when you're playing a UNC offense that averages 7 yards per play. 7.0 flat. That's good. They're explosive. You're not tackling against this team? Adios, Josh Downs. Adios, Sam Howell. Sam Howell at 9.2K. Very mercurial. Very difficult to tell. But he has been more consistent this year because he has decided he wants to run the football. And he's been doing it a lot. Has double-digit carries in every single game this year. Has 3 different 100-yard rushing games. I really like Sam Howell. Let me just say that. You can nitpick his game. I love the Sam Howell experience. Sometimes you get some really wonky games like you did last week where they allowed Florida State to go on a 35-7 run. But that's the thing. When you have UNC going against Miami, it's really not trustworthy. But I feel like they're going to just fall into points somehow. So Sam Howell at 9.2K, probably the top quarterback on the slate. All right, Josh Downs, 8.7, definitely the top wide receiver on the slate, has 39 targets in his last 3 games. That is insane. This kid is explosive. He is 3rd in the entire country in receiving yardage. He is absolutely fantastic. I would not consider their secondary options. Emory Simmons is 2nd, but he only has 12 targets in his last 3 games. Why is he priced at 6.7K? They just assume that he is Daz Newsome, wherever the secondary option is supposed to be, and the equivalent in the last couple of years. He's not. Morales is min priced. He's the tight end. He has 11 targets over that span, and he has been just about as productive as Simmons, if not more. A lot of that's touchdown luck. You can see he has a few 1 reception, 1 touchdown games, but they're going to be scoring a lot, and he's min priced. Sure, if you need a min price guy, sure. Okay, I mentioned Miami can't tackle. They actually have a decent defensive line. They're actually decent against the rush. This UNC, like I said, they're so hard to trust. They returned all 5 linemen from a year ago. I thought their running game was just going to be automatic. It really hasn't. It's been Sam Howell buoying the numbers. Ty Chandler's a Tennessee transfer. He's been okay. He's clearly not as talented as the 2 guys they had last year. But listen to this. They ran for over 600 yards combined against Virginia and Florida State. So it looked like they were the best rushing offense of all time in those 2 games. But sandwiched in between those 2 games, they laid a dud against Georgia Tech, and they laid a dud against Duke. 2 not good teams, especially Duke. And their offensive line kind of got dominated by Duke, even though it was a 38-7 game. That's just because they were way more talented. But, I don't know. I don't think their offensive line is playing at a good level. I don't think Ty Chandler has been fantastic, but Miami can't tackle. Miami likes to give up when they're down in games. If Miami gets down, they could get down bad in this one. But really, anything could happen in that one. Those 2 programs are yeesh. All right, BYU Baylor. Not a fantastic fantasy one in this, so it'll probably be pretty quick. Over-under is only at 50.5. BYU is plus 6.5. I did grab some there. I did do a write-up for this for covers.com. Go ahead and check that out. I did grab BYU plus 6.5. I thought about waiting until I got the 7. I just said, whatever. I got a deadline. I'm just going to get this one in. I'm not really sure how I feel. BYU, basically, they've been really good as road underdogs, 23-9 over the last 32. But Baylor has just been killing everyone's spreadsheets. Baylor is just one of those teams that doesn't give a shit what your spreadsheets say about how good they're supposed to be. They just go out and win. Now, kind of like Kentucky. Now, that's tough to forecast to happen game over game. Interesting on this one, Baylor does have a few former BYU coaches now on their staff, just as early as last year. I think it's their offensive line coach. There's some quality control offensive assistant, whatever the hell. And then there's Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator. So I don't think this is going to be super high scoring. Baylor has a good defense. BYU's defense is just all right. Neither team, I think, is going to push the tempo very much. Jaron Hall is a dual threat at 7K. I don't really see that many reasons to play him in a tough matchup. I will say he did not get full reps last week going into the game. The coaching staff seems to be super adamant about he wasn't getting a full week of practice, so I guess they just want to make excuses for him. I know that sounds a little harsh, but they seem to be more adamant about that than they should. But he's a good runner, and he's not a terrible thrower, and I think he's perfectly meh. As far as stacking options or just BYU wide receiving options in general, Gunnar Romney is the top guy at 5.9K, does have 20 targets in his last 3. Paua, 5.3K, does have 19 targets in that span. And then Puka Nacua, I love Puka Nacua. He's at 4K. Do I love him for fantasy? I think he's a big play threat. He wasn't on the field a ton last week. His brother was on the field, Samson. I don't know if he took snaps away from him, but that's what it looks like digging into the logs. I think Puka Nacua is very talented. For a team that doesn't throw the ball a whole ton and wants to keep it on the ground, and they have 3 receivers they give work to. It's kind of a tough sell, but I think these guys are all decently cheap. I think I'd let Puka Nakua's way. Isaac Rex, the tight end, he's extremely touchdown dependent. He's been pretty good at getting those touchdowns in his career, though. All right, running back. Everyone probably knows the drill by now. It's Tyler Algier. I won't be playing him at that price. Laid pretty much a dud. I know he had 18 points against Boise State, but I thought that was pretty poor. Boise State has some pretty bad metrics, rush defense-wise, line-wise, tackling-wise, and it was an okay performance, but he's had one really big performance, and I haven't really been super impressed outside of that. That being said, he is the workhorse. All right, when we're looking at Baylor, they play at a slow pace. They actually haven't snapped the ball over 70 times yet in a game, which is pretty wild. Get Jerry Bohannon. I think it's Jerry, not Gary. It's with a G. I don't know. It's kind of an odd spelling. I actually think that's how my grandpa spelled it, and I called him Jerry. So I'm going to say Jerry Bohannon. Whatever. I'm not super close to that grandpa. Anyway, shout out Grandpa Jerry for listening. Jerry Bohannon, he's been really good this year, amazingly. I have not been expecting it. He threw for over 350 yards and 4 touchdowns against West Virginia, and that's really good. West Virginia's defense is pretty solid. Bohannon never really throws his attempts. He hasn't gone over 30 yet this year. He's been extremely efficient, so efficient that one would have to guess it will not continue. He also hasn't ran the ball a ton or for a lot of yards, but he manages to get a rushing touchdown in every single game. The profile definitely smells. BYU secondary isn't fantastic, so I guess he could keep producing. He does run a little bit. He does run at the goal line, and he is only 6.3K. I might actually play some Bohannon. I might. Even though the profile stinks, that's cheap. That's cheap for a dual threat. I don't know. As a touchdown favorite at home, not great BYU secondary. I don't know. All right, not going to stack him. I saw some lineups. I think the winning lineup might have Thornton in them. I was like, why? Just a ridiculous play, but sometimes that works. Taking down tournaments. Tyquan Thornton's the guy. If you're choosing anyone, 22 targets in his last 3. Estrada has 16 targets in his last 3, but he only played 19 pass snaps last week, so I will not be looking Estrada's way at 3.1K. I might have to do some digging deeper into his profile since he does have... It looks good, right? He's not on the field a lot, but it looks good. He has been productive, and like I said, BYU secondary not great. I would imagine Estrada will be probably the most popular punt play down there, but punt plays usually aren't, right? That's not... You're not really worried about the ownership, mostly down there, by virtue of being a punt. And other than that, Ben Sims, their tight end, they do like to throw him the ball. That's BYU's offense coming over to Baylor. Jeff Grimes. So he's okay at 3.8K. Okay, Pitt versus VT. Apparently we buried the lead because this Pitt passing offense has just been amazing. Minus 4.5 for Pitt. In this one, they've thrown for over 300 yards in every game. They have 14 touchdowns in their past 4 games through the air. What the hell? Where did this come from? They've always thrown the ball a lot. They have not really thrown the ball well. They are this season. You can see highly suspect level of competition. Highly suspect. UMass, Tennessee, Western Michigan, New Hampshire, Georgia Tech. That's suspect, but those teams have also, that's far above what they're holding on average, pretty much every single one of those games. So, I don't know. I don't know about Pitt. They played a pretty good tempo. They're going to throw the ball a lot. I think Kenny Pickett at 8.4K, you can make an argument he should be over 9K. He does get a pretty tough matchup here. It's at Lane Stadium. It's not a night game, which I do think makes a decent difference. But it's a tough place to play. It's a pretty good secondary, but it's not like they're shut down. It's not like they're fantastic. Virginia Tech, I think they're going to try to limit possessions. Are they going to have success here? I don't know. But 3 of the 5 teams they've played have only gotten off 63 offensive snaps. So I'm pretty sure that's what Virginia Tech's going to try to do in this one. If Pitt gets a couple 3-and-outs, I could just see it being disappointing. Right, I'm not saying that's going to happen by any means, but if that does happen, if they have 2 3-and-outs in the first half, Pitt might only score 7 points in the first half, and you'd be like, what the hell? So that is on the table, but those numbers are really hard to argue with. Pickett's been going off. I have a weird feeling about this game because I feel like it could be a bloodbath in Pitt's favor. Burmeister is going to try to play the quarterback for Virginia Tech. I'm pretty sure he like busted his collarbone last week. That's what it looked like against Notre Dame. He was shown on the sidelines trying to throw, and he couldn't even like get his arm above. He couldn't even raise it above his shoulder. He couldn't throw, and they had the backup quarterback in there. He basically looked like a fruity Trevor Lawrence without the talent. Trevor Lawrence without the talent, and then that kid gets hurt. And next thing you know, Burmeister's in the game throwing the ball. Actually threw a dime that the wide receiver dropped. Ran for a touchdown, but he didn't look the same. So I just have a weird feeling Virginia Tech's a little beat up. If it is a blowout, I think it's going to be in Pitt's favor. Being said, you never know what to expect for Pitt. They just drop games at the weirdest time, and they are playing at Lane Stadium. It's a tough one, but something tells me a Pitt blowout is on the table. Anyway, looking at stacking options, Jordan Addison at 8.K. I am tempted to play him. I think he's a fine option. I think he's a pretty solid PPR guy. 23 targets in his last 3. I don't hate it at all. I think I'd prefer him to Martin, but it's pretty close. The wide receiver options are pretty good this week. There are definitely some really good pay-up options. It's just who you prefer. Taysom Rack has 12 targets in his last 3. His average depth of target has been really solid in that time span. It's been 20. So Taysom Mack is the deep threat at 5.4K. Shocky Jock Louis has also been getting some targets, but not doing much. Him and Jared Wayne are both kind of part-time rotational guys, so not something I trust a ton. And then Lucas Kroll, tight end, is pretty good at 3.8K. 11 targets in his last 3. Mack's going to be on the field pretty much every time with Shocky Jock and Wayne. Splitting time. Pitt does not have a run game. Doesn't exist. All right. Let me make sure there's not an egregious price before I skip over it. No, there's not. Okay, Virginia Tech. Nothing stands out about this team. They spread the ball around. The targets are spread out. The rushes are spread out. Like I said, Burmeister, there's no way I could play him at 6.3K. If I knew he was healthy, I actually would probably play Burmeister. If I was wrong and maybe he just had a stinger, which maybe that's what it is because he's playing this week, so he probably obviously doesn't have a broken collarbone. I don't know. He can run. This Pitt defense has been awful. I think their secondary is actually atrocious. They always have a good D-line because Pitt's just a D-line factory apparently. But dude, I think their secondary is really bad, and they are not a good tackling team. They've allowed 350 or more passing yards in their last 2 real games, against real competition. I pointed out how bad their schedule was. One against Western Michigan, one against Georgia Tech. Tennessee also probably couldn't have gotten over that mark, but Joe Milton was that quarterback. And if you listen to the show, you know how we feel about Joe Milton, just missing wide open receivers because he is not a quarterback, just a big dude with an arm. Anyway, Pitt's rush D is good. I'm not playing Virginia Tech's rushing attack, only allowing 3.0 yards per carry. As far as receiving options, I'm not playing them, but I think Trey Turner would be your top guy at 5K. I think that pricing's off. 25 targets in his last 3. Tavian Robinson, 6K. He only has 18 targets in his last 3, which isn't terrible. But Turner is definitely the better price-adjusted play. All right, we made it. The finale. Wow, what a game to talk about. Purdue versus Iowa. Iowa, another one of those teams. The spreadsheets don't like them. I thought they'd been the worst team in a few games they played. Definitely last week, Penn State. I definitely think Penn State would have won if Sean Clifford didn't get hurt. I definitely think they would have won if they didn't turn the ball over, but I guess that's just what Iowa does. Iowa's just guaranteed to get 3 interceptions in this game. One of them is going to be a pick 6 because that's Iowa football. Iowa has a really good rush defense, really good defense in general. Not really much I have to say. I could not contemplate playing a Purdue quarterback. David Bell is one of the best wide receivers in college football. Had 11 targets last week. Is going to have 11 targets about in that range pretty much every week. I think his ownership will be low since Iowa's defense is so good and everybody is obsessed with them apparently right now. But there's some other good expensive wide receivers. I'm not sure you want to get there. Purdue cannot run the ball. All right, Payne Durham's a good tight end at 6K, but tough matchup. Not sure I could get there. I think Bell's only 1,000 more. I would just go there. Milton Wright's really been stepping up. That might change if Payne Durham comes back, but he's been really good. He's been really impressive. Had 7 targets last week. 4.5K against Purdue. Not sure I could get there, but you could do worse. Spencer Petras is a game manager at quarterback. He's not very good. The wide receiving options, they don't really have any. Sam Laporta is their best player, in my opinion, at tight end. him and Tyler Goodson. It's probably Tyler Goodson and Sam Laporta. Had a bad game last week, so maybe some people jump off. I think this is a decent matchup for him. Purdue's not a good tackling team, by the way. Very poor tackling team. Arlen Bruce, very good wide receiver, freshman wide receiver. I am a fan of his work. He's really come on strong in the last 2 weeks, but he only has played 18 pass snaps in that time frame, so I'm not sure I could trust it yet. I think Tyler Goodson is a good play this week. They haven't been running the ball well because they just do not have a good offense. Iowa doesn't have a good offense. I'm sorry, they don't. Does that matter at home against Purdue? I don't know. But the fact that they're only 11.5 point favorites as the number 2 ranked team in the country tells you just about all you need to know about Iowa. That being said, they're at home, and they are the better team. And Tyler Goodson is a very good running back. 6.5K. It's a pretty good price. I like that. All right, we made it, folks. We're done. That is the slates. No prize picks coming out today. It's only Wednesday. There's not really much on the board. I will try to make that video for prize picks. Prize picks has been very good, and thankfully it has, because DraftKings, like I said, I've been finding it tougher this year. So hopefully we have a good week. It's been rough for me the last 3 weeks. So let me know if you're picking up on anything I'm not. If you're doing a good job reading ownership, anything at all. It's community based. I hope that you found this free information useful. Go ahead and give a like, subscribe, comment, review, whatever the hell you feel like giving. I would appreciate it. Twitter, it's at YonkersCFB. And yeah, that's the show. Good week. Good luck, everybody. Week 7. Let's make it a profitable one.